me. It's the New York Post front page. And he pointed to Oval Office insult. 2 9/11 Dems walk out on Bush. And then he put in front of me this story in today's Washington Post. And if we go down to the bottom of the story, you'll see where he's underlined in yellow what I assume is the same story. And what point are you trying to make, Mr. Drudge?
Teacher Brian Lamb, somebody's last paragraph is somebody's lead. This story was my lead last night. Upon hearing, I got a tip the second I arrived in this town last night that 2 Dem commissioners from the 911 panel had walked out in the middle of this historic questioning of Bush and Cheney. And remember, they had been arguing about how this session would take, how long would they meet, what would the conditions be, how would Bush appear. And to have, and this is Kerry and Hamilton specifically, walk out in the middle of this. Now, they cited prior engagements. One met the Prime Minister of Canada, one met a fellow or former compadre, a Senator Pete Domenici on the Hill. How do they justify walking out, not only of the President of the United States, but something that they claim is so important to the country that we get to the bottom of this 911? I think it's a debacle. Lachlan Murdoch put it on the front page. Len Downey buried it in the last paragraph.
What's so wrong about that? I mean, give us some more. What's, you know, if they had the prior commitment...
Let's put it this way. If I walk out of this interview at half past, I like to see your face. You probably move on to the next guest or Ben Affleck or whoever's in town waiting in the green room here. But I can't imagine walking out on the President of the United States to begin with, let alone for something this important, let alone having made the point that the President needs to give us as much time as we need. The White House had originally offered 1 hour. They expanded it because of concerns raised by the Democrats. And to have them leave, I just don't know what they're doing. And as a taxpayer, I'm this close to asking for my money back.
Matt Drudge will be with us until the top of the hour, and he lives in Florida, and he comes up here, well, probably more than once a year, but how often do you come to town?
I try not to too much. The last time I was here was last summer, so it's about once a year.
Who are you the guest of tonight at the White House Correspondents'
Tomorrow night, the Washington Times, Wes Pruden, who's giving the Washington Post a run for its money. It's not a one-newspaper town. You know, a lot of people point to Washington as a one-newspaper town. It's not. You actually have roll call in the Hill, and now with this online business, it seems to me D.C. is no longer a monopoly of information. So I like to always hang out with the underdogs, and the Washington Times certainly is proving to be that.
Front page of USA Today. We talked about it for a half an hour this morning. What do you think of the story that started with the Nightline tonight and Ted Koppel reading all the names?
How is he going to get all those names in that short a period of time without it becoming sort of a trivia? So for instance, the USA Today does not put everybody on the front page. How do they decide who goes on the front page when you have 700 casualties? Who got the front?
These are only casualties from April.
From April.
119 of them.
Well, Koppel, though, is going to try to do the entire war.
700.
I know people are saying it's a sweep stunt. I don't think so. You know, one other network that I'm aware of was going to do this. They decided not to. Somebody operating in this building, as a matter of fact, was going to devote a show to listing the names. They decided not to.
Is it called Fox?
Not going to say. It's a controversial move. I guess no advertising. I haven't been briefed if there's going to be advertising in this. There's something about making money off of dead people that bothers me. You know, all this starts, Brian Lamb, from a website called militarycity.com, and over at Drudge, I have been listing this for months and months and months and months. This is the running list. We're not just going to do it once every Friday night, or once every sweep season, or once every a war. This is a running list of military dead in this Iraq War Part 2. So it all started on the internet, much like the Dover casket started a week ago. That broke out on the internet too. So the internet is kind of pushing, I think, a lot of the main press to get with it.
Al Newharth, founder of USA Today, takes partial blame for Jack Kelly this morning, as on the same day that, actually they did it yesterday, they announced a new editor of USA Today, Ken Paulson. Everybody says they're surprised. He's 50 years old. He's a lawyer. He's been around the Gannett organization for a long time. He runs the First Amendment Center in Nashville. What's your reaction to all this?
coming from the internet point of view, which I do, and have been accused of all sorts of rumors and gossip and innuendo and trash and making up stories and plagiarizing stories, especially being accused by the USA Today. I know recently when I reported on what was happening behind the scenes with the Kerry campaign and an allegation of a possible affair in the Kerry campaign, USA Today wrote 1,000 words on why they didn't print the story, but how terrible it was that I would dare to report what's going on behind the scenes in the campaign, and very looking down their nose at the internet as a less medium. I think all of these people, from the New York Times, and Hal Raines did the same thing at the New York Times, always looking down at other people in the business who may not be operating with a full corporate backing and lawyers and editors. I think that's got to stop. I think these two stories have proven that you can have major problems in main newspapers with corporate lawyers, with a newsroom staff of 1,000+ people in some cases in some of these media organizations. They have to stop looking down at their nose at other people, because their house certainly isn't that clean.
We're going to go to the phones for Matt Drudge in just a moment, so begin dialing now. The numbers will be on the screen here, and that's the international number you see right at the moment. There you go. It's the 202-585, and pick your number, where you belong. How has life changed for you in the last year?
It hasn't much. It's the same old, same old. You know, I'm more focused than ever just on stories that come my way. When I first started doing this show, this would mark, I think, the 8th year this weekend that I've sat with you. It has changed from the standpoint where the readership has grown, and also my ability to move things fast has grown. And I'll raise this example. CBS this week, you talk about pictures. We are in a mode of, between the Diana Grizzly pictures and everything else, torture photos coming out of Iraq, allegedly by U.S. troops on Iraqi prisoners. Now, this is the lead story all over Europe this morning. Look at the Daily Mail. Look at the Daily Mirror.
This is the cover of the front page of the Daily Mail.
Today.
And here's the cover of the Daily. When was this?
Today.
Now,
we just saw the New York Post. This is Sky News, which is Rupert Murdoch's news organization rival CNN in England. He leads with it in England. He doesn't lead with it here. And
what's that about?
And again, going back to the Washington Post, page A24, give them credit for at least showing some of this. But how is it the top story in England, maybe because they're anti-U.S. or they've been against the war, and it's buried here? What the internet allows me to do, and if you see on my website, I've chosen to also put it on the front page. So what has changed is the ability, I think, to move and influence more than it was 7 or 8 years ago, simply because of the mass amount of readers that are coming to the website. That, to me, is one of the big differences.
Matt Drudge, we go to Shawnee Mission, Kansas. Good morning. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to thank Matt Drudge for having a good informational webpage. And I really had to comment on that lady from Detroit, and I'm sorry to backtrack here, but you know, she said she was a Christian, and I don't know why having God is good broadcast in a foreign language. I mean, she was just a bigot, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
All right, thanks. She's talking about a story that you may not have heard of, where in Detroit they have the 5 calls to prayer every day broadcast on the. It's you didn't hear it, did you?
No, I didn't hear it.
We better go on.
I was in makeup.
We'll be right. We'll be complicated. East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Matt Drudge.
Yes, Mr. Drudge. John Buckner here, East Stroudsburg. When you first came on, you mentioned that Lee Hamilton had walked out on the presidential interview there with Cheney and Bush, and I was wondering, who was the other one that walked out?
Bob Kerry.
Bob Kerry.
Who oddly has been the most vocal and the most media-ish, you know, appearing on The Daily Show, making the media rounds, been very busy. He walked out on the president and Cheney yesterday, I understand 1 hour early, to go meet on the Hill with a senator. Citing a prior commitment. I don't know how they're going to wiggle their way out of this from a PR standpoint. Kerry released a statement saying, yeah, it does look kind of strange, but the president understands. Well, we may not understand, the taxpayers.
Caller, what would you like to say about this?
Yes. You know, I'm really surprised that this is the most important interview questions that needed to be asked for the President of the United States and the Vice President. The most significant interview in the history of this country. There's not going to be one recording of this interview. I'm surprised all 10 members didn't get up and walk out. I'm surprised they agreed to it to begin with. I'm very disheartened that they agreed that they would see Cheney and Bush at the same time and not have any tape recordings of this, so the American people can be informed on exactly. I would like to see the posture. I would have liked to have heard the body language, if you get my meaning. I would have loved to have heard some kind of a transcript from this meeting, with this interview with the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States.
Can you keep in mind, would you have also felt the same way about wanting a recording of former President Bill Clinton's session with the commission?
Of course not, because all that dancing around over a blue dress was nonsense to begin with.
Caller, he didn't ask about that. He asked about his appearance before this commission when he talked about the whole situation when he was president.
Yes, I would have loved to have heard Clinton as well. Every one of them, these important people, that Sandy Berger was there. I want to hear it. I want to hear for myself the answers that these people gave to the questions that this commission asked.
Thanks, caller.
Interesting point. It goes back to this split that apparently is developing in this town, is what do you show and what don't you show? Do you show the caskets? Don't you show the caskets? Do you show the torture photos? Don't you show the torture photos? Do you have the testimony in public? Don't you? It's a split town on this note, and all we're left with are these wire photos that show them coming and going. We don't know what went on in there. We know a few of them walked out. And I only know that because of sources who tipped me off, but we actually don't know what went on in there.
This is Doug Mills' photo on the front page of the New York Times, and it's the only one of its kind in any of the newspapers. And you have Tom Kean and Fred Fielding and Lee Hamilton. They're meeting with some of the president's staff. And the accounts this morning suggest that besides Dick Cheney, also Alberto Gonzalez was in there taking some notes. But one of the things that they point out in the stories this morning is that when the commission members left the office, they had to give the notes to the White House for security purposes. I assume once they look at them, they get them back. What do you think of that?
Yes, that's part of it too. Personally, I don't know if I would trust a Richard Benveniste in there either. They were also wanded, Brian Lamb, when they went in, almost as if the way we wand anybody going through airports or anything else. What did they think they were doing, bringing in recording or bringing in weapons? I don't think it's gotten that bad in this town where somebody would actually take violence on the president from the 901 Commission, but you never know.
Pittsburgh, you're on the air. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment for Matt. Tom, I enjoy his website. I'm an everyday, I check into it every day, and just want to tell him keep up the good work. Thank you.
What do you think of this issue? And I know we used you linked us today on the issue of the church and the communion and the Catholic Church and Congresswoman Pelosi on there. What do you think of this?
Is she going to do it publicly? Are we going to see it? Are we going to have video of that? It's getting, this town is starting to fight over religion more and more. Not that it hasn't in its past, but it's certainly coming back as Kerry accuses the president of bringing God into it, as he's quoting scripture himself. Little confusion there, so that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, Pelosi was the latest to come forward saying that she will take communion. I do want to point out a story that's breaking out of Hollywood, since it's this weekend and all the movie stars are here and football players and everything else. Somebody we haven't heard from in a while, Howard Dean, is preparing a TV show. I don't know if he's going to schedule it opposite C-SPAN, Washington Journal, but he might. This with the Judge Judy producers, of all people. They've cast their eye now on Howard Dean, Dateline Daily Variety this morning. Howard Dean is in serious talks for a syndicated talk show. So that one actually may work. I would love to see Howard Dean every day go after the issues.
Kansas City, you're next.
Hello, this is the first-time caller. I'd like to ask Matt what his actual political, or who he voted for the last election in 2000. And I also would like to ask what the impetus was for the Kerry intern story on your website, because a lot of people actually took your report and reported on that, and that sort of turned into a non-story. So I wondered how that whole thing started and where that follow-up came, because there's a couple of follow-up reports that I heard that the woman was in Africa and she denied everything that you said. So I wondered what happened with that, and I wondered what your vote was in 2000. And I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you very much.
Well, here we are talking about another non-story. Gee, I thought it was a story. Wesley Clark, a candidate at the time, told reporters off the record, Kerry's going to bomb out. Have you seen the National Enquirer, which was all about womanizing? We go to our National Enquirer for news, it appears. And I thought that was news. Behind the scenes, there was also several news organizations that were investigating a woman who had bragged in emails and other places of having contact with Kerry somehow. It was very interesting. She's writing a piece in the New York Magazine, this woman, to talk about the whole dynamic. I can reveal this morning that she is being very aggressive against me for daring to report what I thought was a news story, and I still do. She's got to be very careful, though, what she says, because there apparently is an evidence trail, at least of her bragging with contact with Kerry and other things. Now, I don't know where you draw the line, caller, on what is news, but to me it was news. You had a rival saying Kerry's going to bomb out. Have you seen the National Enquirer? And I just simply make all this information public, and I'm the bad guy. And but I relish that role. I did vote for Bush. I don't know who I'm going to vote for this time. I'm still on the fence. You know, I lean much more libertarian on a lot of issues. And when I arrived yesterday, Brian, and as you do coming in from National Airport, you see the Washington Monument, and I saw the wall going up around the Washington Monument. It broke my heart. Have you seen the wall?
Sure.
They're building there.
Drive by every day.
How long has that been in progress?
Several months, but what they have there now is just the wood fence around it. And inside that's where they're building the wall.
The country's been through so much since its inception. Why are we building walls now? And it broke my heart. And for a second, I felt anger at the people in power in this town. Why are we building walls, and ugly walls, around monuments? And I grew up in D.C. I used to roll down the hill as a little boy from the monument, the grass hill there. And now the new generation is going to look at walls around George Washington's monument. I'm not blaming Bush directly for this, but this town, with the camera surveillance and everything that's changing, and I know the people in power feel they're doing this to protect us, I don't know how it protects us to have a sensibility of walls. Capitol Hill, too, is all cement walls. I don't know where we're going if this is our future, to have walls all over our great monuments.
Let me just show you a picture on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. This is what's called 17th Street right here. You see cars on it. And how close is the World War II memorial? It's right here. It's a $172 or $3 million memorial. It's opened yesterday, and you can see here's the reflecting pool. This is the famous area right in front of what is the Lincoln Memorial. And that's we're going to have a feature on that tomorrow at 9:30 on our morning show. But this has there's no restrictions here. There's no wall here.
Why not?
Good question. Let's go to Atlanta, Georgia for Matt Drudge. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're on the air, sir.
Thank you. Matt, just wanted to say thank you for what's become my homepage.
Thank you.
And for your Sunday night radio program. Chance to plug that.
Let me ask you, caller, why have you made Matt Drudge your homepage?
Because the news changes frequently, and he keeps up with it. And that way I can keep up with it.
Let me ask, before you ask your question, let me ask Matt Drudge, do you have somebody else when you're traveling watching the news?
Oh, I certainly do. I have one other guy. His name is Andrew Breitbart. He does, these days, about 5-6 hours a day during the afternoon out from California. And it's made a big difference. And he's been great. He's been here with me for about 5 years. But that's it. Everything else you see is updated with these fingers. I mean, this is not an automated, I'm not a Google News where a computer picks the news. You know, there's a lot of fuss being made about Google and their stock offering. They're the front page of every newspaper in America for all of their genius. And they've been credited with revolutionizing the news business, and that bothers me. While I use Google, I don't use them for human reality behind news. A computer, you know, selects their headlines, automated. And I remember one time I logged on Google News and it said, Britt Hume, special report, 6 p.m., Fox. It was their lead story. It was an advertisement because a computer had generated it. If we're putting billions of dollars of worth on computers selecting news, I don't know where this journalism world is headed.
Atlanta, what was your question, please?
Oh, actually, the question I had to do with yesterday's 911. The two commission members that left early. Do you suppose that they might have changed their pre-appointed schedules had they been publicly aired? In other words, was it more important to them to get the president and the vice president to speak before the commission than really what it was that the content of their answers, in other words?
Thanks.
Nice rhetorical question there. Oh, do you think Bob Kerrey would have gotten up and walked out in the middle of live television testimony airing on television? I don't think so. It's an excellent point. These people are adults. It left a bad taste in my mouth, especially after all the rancor on the president's doing this, the president isn't doing this, and we finally sits down. They said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're busy. We have to go."
Let's go to Waterford, Michigan. Good morning.
Good morning. One of the things that I would like to express to Mr. Drudge is that apparently he wasn't keeping up on the news because it was announced on, I can't remember whether it was either Fox or CNN, but I was watching right after the interview with the president was over, and they announced right there that the two men who left had informed the president before they ever went into the meeting that they would have to leave at that point. And if you'll remember, originally the president and vice president had said that they would only meet with the committee for 2 hours. They apparently extended it later, but the two men did let him know that they would have to leave after the 2 hours, and that was before they went in. So I don't think that could hardly be called an insult.
Okay, I'll leave that to you. I still find it that their job, this 911 commission, they shouldn't have taken the job unless they were committed to doing it. There's probably would have been plenty of citizens, activists and citizens who would have loved to have had a chance to sit on a commission overlooking evidence, who wouldn't have been too busy with lunches and dedications and meeting other foreign leaders in the middle of questioning the President of the United States.
Let's go to Fort Irwin, California for Matt Drudge.
Good morning. I like how you mentioned the National Enquirer because that's the way I view your web page, the Drudge Report, because I don't think it has any basis on reality. And as a soldier, I'm offended that you would highlight the deaths of mercenaries that you called contractors, security contractors, and trivialize the deaths of U.S. soldiers in the field. And also, Brian, you mentioned, and I've been trying to call in for a while, you were on the air with Bob Novak, and you said that the minorities were not in higher proportions than whites. And I disagree with you. If you go to ArmyTimes.com, it shows an article from a wonderful soldier, and 22% of the enlisted force in the United States Army is black compared to 14.3% of the U.S. population. So,
Caller, what we were talking about wasn't the force numbers. We were talking about the casualty numbers based on what we saw in the newspapers and the pictures that were showing. It was not a disproportionate number of minorities.
Well, I think as journalists, both of you have an obligation to try to at least be truthful in your characterizations of the news.
Mr. Drudge, you want to argue with that?
No, I don't want to argue with that. I don't know how much he reads my webpage. I guess some of it is National Enquirer, like Ben Affleck coming to Capitol Hill. But I didn't invite him, sir. Ted Kennedy did, to argue for a higher minimum wage. Seeing he makes $20 million a picture, I guess he is in a position to argue that. Yeah, sometimes I do splash sensational stuff. Janet Jackson's exposure on CBS led the website for that whole week. But that ended up being a huge issue on Capitol Hill with FCC hearings and all the rest. So the National Enquirer world we live in, you can't blame me for that, sir. You can blame me for things, but you can't blame me for that.
Let me ask you about something that is on your webpage. It says the AP World, AP National, all these you click on, for instance, AP Breaking. And I don't remember for sure. Is the AP breaking through Las Vegas?
I try to go for the ones with the less graphics. Probably is. There's another place, My Way News, Yahoo I use sometimes, wherever I can get my hands on it. It used to be Newsday, used to be Washington Post. They offer a live AP feed, but now you have to log in to see some of their stuff.
Is that free to you?
Of course it's free to me. The internet is designed to be free with free movement and free clicks. The creator of the World Wide Web, or at least the guy credited with it, saying he laments what's happening now because of these pay sites and these password-protected sites. He envisioned a whole network of pages interconnected with a click.
So what is your philosophy about if you're clicking on the AP and somebody's paying for that, the Las Vegas paper or News Airways is paying for it, then what about their philosophy? Do they come after you and say, we want you to pay something?
Oh, no, I think they probably want the traffic. Otherwise, why would they have a website? And what I'm doing, I don't frame it. I literally let the reader leave my site to go. And if they want to come back to me, that's fine. If they never want to come back, that's fine too. But it's freedom of movement. And Las Vegas, of course, can think of ways to pay for their bandwidth and their server by running ads and all the rest. But, you know, the Associated Press, you stumble onto something. Now you don't have to be in a newsroom to have access to wire services, and this has changed everything. I remember in the early days on Prodigy, when it was owned by Sears, my amazement logging on, seeing an A wire for the Associated Press, now called AP Online, where you could see things that were left out of your newspaper, you can see things in real time, you can see things that Dan Rather left out. I was floored and very excited because I thought, my God, this is going to change things. Now with 1 out of 2 homes having internet service, and that's going to go up, we're going to be 100% here, probably past television saturation soon, my prediction. We all are newsmen now. We all sit in the same position that these broadcasters had sat in for years and years and years. And there's a lot of debate in this town on who controls the news. Ted Koppel said the internet is the bane of the First Amendment, simply because I guess he's uncomfortable with other people having the same access to information and framing it from their point of view. But saying about that, we all now have access, and it's just not the AP. We have Reuters, we have UPI, AFP, ITAR TASS, Islamic Wire. It goes on and on and on. And you can now see the entire world unfolding in real time for little or no cost, and you can make up your own mind.
Cleveland, you're on the air. Go ahead, please. Matt Drudge.
Oh, hi, Brian.
Hi.
My sister calls a lot, and I thought that I would try to get in, and I did, and I'm so glad I get a chance to talk to Mr. Drudge. Last week, Condoleezza Rice gave a speech by which she made a slip of the lip, calling George Bush her husband. As Brian was scaling down your webpage, I didn't see nothing about that on there. And I'm wondering, how in the world can a woman who has never been married make such a slip of the lip? I'm wondering if Condi is spending too much time on the ranch, if you get my drift.
Thanks. You see that?
Oh, of course I saw that. It started in New York Magazine Intelligentsia. It was a dinner. Wasn't it a dinner? It wasn't a speech.
No.
So caller, I mean, you got to get the information correct. I didn't run with it because it wasn't my item. I didn't have any sources on it. They quoted New York Times sources or something like this. I didn't see the New York Times print the story, not even Maureen Dowd, and she loves this kind of stuff.
Washington Post printed it.
The Washington Post did. Condoleezza Rice, to me, when she went on Capitol Hill as an equal, not as a victim, for somebody who wants to see minorities excel, I was floored. I was so happy for her. I didn't even hear what she was saying. Her lips were just moving. The fact that an African-American woman could be up there in the center of power, not as a victim, not with somebody complaining something was left in a Coke can, the last time we saw something like that in this town. I was so excited. One of Bush's finest legacies is going to be that week when Condoleezza Rice was presented. A new face of America, and I applaud this president for that.
Mount Judith, Tennessee. Good morning.
Hey, how are you two this morning?
Welcome.
I'd like to ditto what you just said about Condi at least. Secondly, and most importantly, ABC's reading of the names, I have no objection to that if they would show in the background the mass graves, the 35 by 35 mile ammunition dump, the jets that are buried in the sand, and so forth, and maybe list a few thousand names of people killed by Saddam.
Again, I'm not against the media listing these names. I'm all for it. As a matter of fact, could bring some civic duty back to these networks and stop showing us Grizzly Diana photos, deaths, and stuff like this. I don't take issue with it. Again, I'm wondering if they're selling ads based on this. I'm wondering if Nielsen, if they'll be bragging in press releases, great ratings they're getting for this. If they cross that line, which they sometimes do, and brag that they had a huge audience or a 20 share, I think it's going to get unseemly, and they have to be very careful. Jeff Schneider, ABC publicity guy, if you're listening, I'd be very careful issuing press releases bragging about increased audience based on listing soldiers' death.
Let me ask you where you draw the line. While standing in the grocery store last night, I saw the Globe. And on the cover of the Globe, and I think they're all owned by the same company, aren't they? The Globe and the Star and the National Enquirer. There is a photograph of a nationally known woman politician, and there on the headline is, and another picture, 4-year lesbian affair or something like that. It doesn't, I mean, I didn't pick it up, I didn't read it, I have no idea. Sometimes they trick you to get inside and then the story is nothing. But where do you draw the line when one of those publications does something like that?
They didn't pitch me that story interesting, and they usually pitch me the ones they think are solid. I don't know where you draw the line. In a free press, it's up to David Pecker, who owns the magazine, where he draws the line. It's up to the newspaper, the distributors, to the grocery store who carries it. They've kept the Globe on the front of it. Was it at the checkout point?
Yes.
Because some people have moved the Globe off since they've revealed the Kobe Bryant accuser by face, and they did the O.J. Simpson murder scene photos, the Globe. They were notorious for doing a lot of grisly things there. They have to make the decision where they draw the line, as I make the decision where I draw the line. You know, I don't report to anybody, and I don't operate by a government decree. When Donald Rumsfeld tells me I can't do this and I can't do that, I damn well can do this and I can't do that. I'm not in the military. And there's an interesting story this morning in the Washington Post about Dick Cheney saying he likes Fox News. I don't know where that is.
You had it over there on your pile. We can find that. Let's take a call in the interim from Williamsburg, Virginia. Go ahead, please.
I do a program on the FM station of the College of William and Mary here in Williamsburg. And last week, a week ago, I asked the kids, just take a moment and think how old you are. And then I read the ages of all the kids who had been killed the week before in I'm calling it Vietnam. Yeah, sure. Well, it's Iraq, Vietnam. At any rate, it's a play on what's going to be, what Ted Koppel is talking about and what you people are talking about now. What I do is I try to bring it to the attention of these young people, the perhaps immediacy of what's happening. This is not remote, and it's just a little different slant on what perhaps is going to be being put out now. That's all. It's just a comment that it was done. It was done here in Williamsburg, Virginia. They've got a nice radio station, a nice FM station, and I'm delighted to have done this a week ago, and I may do it again.
Thanks, caller. And what we're looking at is the Washington Post this morning showing the ages of a lot of those killed in the month of April. That actually says that young man's 44. He sure doesn't look it. But here's a 20-year-old, and you'll see it in a moment, another 20-year-old and a 21-year-old. And if you go down the list, it's 19, 24, 41, 41, 31, 22, 25, 20, 24.
And again, if you want to see a complete list, it's militarycity.com for the complete 700. If Ted Koppel reads it too fast tonight, and I don't know how you can look at those names and not be have your heart pound.
Cheney praises Fox News Channel. It was to a big national, I'm not sure it was a fundraising group, but it was thousands of people located in 5,245 parties in 50 states, grassroots rally. Dick Cheney spoke to them, and he says, for example, I end up spending a lot of time watching Fox News because they're more accurate in my experience in those events that I'm personally involved in than many of the other outlets.
This one is interesting. While I have a lot of respect for Fox News Channel, tons of respect for Fox News Channel. My gosh, how they've changed the entire atmosphere in media. You know, now they have as many people, many viewers in prime time as CNN and MSNBC combined over at Fox News. That's how big they've become. However, why do you want the endorsement of the vice president. It seems to me he should fear Fox News. He should hate Fox News. He should. The whole marriage of media and government is a recipe for disaster. And I'm not sure that's what Cheney is saying here. I'm making an extra jump. I don't want to be praised by the president or the vice president for anything. I want them, if I call to actually be in disgust, to fear a phone call. The whole marriage of media, and I was against this during the Clinton age too, when it was the other way, when CNN was more with Rick Kaplan, the head of CNN, and he used to sleep over at the White House every once in a while. The back and forth marriage between media and government bothers me. So Dick Cheney coming out saying, well, Fox News is great. I would be very nervous if I was Roger Ailes over at Fox News Channel. It means, hold on a second, you don't have those in power on the run. You're not covering them aggressively enough. You're not uncovering their secrets enough. And we all know anyone in this town with all these trillions of dollars has secrets and are doing abusive things. So I was a little, my eyebrows raised when I saw that Dick Cheney praises Fox News. It's not an endorsement I would want, even though on the face it seems nice. Not when you're in the news business and you're trying to inflict pain on the powerful.
Do you have a book in the works? Do you have more television or radio under some plan?
No, it's simply all this website. You know, it's.
Do you speak?
I don't speak either. The freedom I find on the internet is unparalleled.
Are you making more money this year than you were last?
Yes, simply because the readership has increased and the ad revenue. You know, it's a place to go if you want to catch eyeballs. You go where the action is. And
tell people again how you make money.
Well, if you go to the website, at the very top, there is one ad, and it is simply that ad, which I don't know who it is there now, Affordable Health Insurance, that rotates. That has now pushed me over 7 figures, and I don't have
7 figures income.
Yes, and I don't have to sit there and...
But you have to click on that ad.
No, yes, it helps if you click on that ad, but just simply that you're reading the ad also makes a big difference. That is dramatically changed as far as revenue goes.
What does that cost if somebody wants to buy that ad?
This I don't know. You buy it by the thousand, and I don't know where it is these days. It's not too expensive, but the fact I could sit here and generate 8 and 9 million of those a day. Yesterday it was a little over 8 million of those ads appeared, and you can do the math on that, but it's now taken me into 7 figures from the internet standpoint. Now, that is unfair to say everybody on the internet is making that kind of money. I'm hitting 9 years online, and I was back there in the day, and every single reader I have, I've earned from through reputation or through just being consistent. I force nobody to come to me. I don't have to pay a clearance fee to get on anybody's radio network or TV show, no info commercial. This is all freedom completely, and the fact you can make a living on it is wonderful.
Conneaut, Ohio, you're on with Matt Drudge. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I kind of feel that the president at the 9/11 Commission meeting, he was doing another political front to show up and be there. The fact that there was nothing's going to come out of it as far as what he said, who said, what said, and to me it seems foolish to continue on wasting that kind of money for him. Another thing I kind of was wondering about, a while back the president was questioned for an apology, and myself, I don't know if people realize it. In my mind, the president apologized somewhere around the 15th of September, 2001, when he made the statement, planes, hijackers getting planes and flying into buildings never would cross my mind. And if I had known that, I would never let it happen. I've tried to find that speech that he made on the Capitol website. I can't find it.
Where do you find the quote, caller?
The quote is from a speech that he made that I remember watching it.
So you're just remembering that quote?
Yeah, I'm remembering that quote. I'm not quoting it because I can't really find it on the website anywhere.
Okay, thanks for calling. What would you suggest to the man? How would he find that?
Oh, it's got to be out there. You have to get more focus. It's a battle of keywords, on the internet. When I do searches, you have to get exact phrasing right. You just can't talk in general terms. Bush apologized, Bush planes. It has to be specific. So I would keep searching for a specific quote if indeed you're intent on finding that.
Santa Rosa, California, for Matt Drudge. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Matt, I'm calling to reminisce about the first, last, and only time I ever listened to you on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the day where you spoke out about 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart.
Yes.
And how no one could convince you that she was really abducted, and how you were sure that she was a willing participant in her disappearance. I'm just wondering how you could say such a thing. I mean, where do you get your information? Do you have a crystal ball? And two, how do you look yourself in the face? And why do decent people have anything to do with you? I mean, here's a 14-year-old girl stolen from her home in the middle of the night, and if that isn't bad enough, she has to listen to somebody like you degrading her all over again on national radio.
Thanks.
He's misrepresenting exactly what I said. I certainly was curious when they first found her. She told the police, "Oh, you think I'm the girl that ran away from home?" Well, that's a question mark. I'm waiting for the trial in that case, sir. We have trials in this country, believe it or not, even in the Mormon conclave there in Utah, unless they've filled up the courts there. We have a legal system. Now, when it came to the movie and the book and all this other cashing out that everybody does in this business, including the new gentleman whose his wife was busted as a CIA agent by Bob Novak, he's written a book, a tell-all book, for cash.
Joe Wilson.
When the TV Guide reported that Elizabeth Smart said, "I want to play me in the movie," I thought that was suspicious, too. I just get suspicious on some of these things. That's just my nature, sir. And, you don't have to listen. And I wasn't so sure. You misrepresented. I'm finding it curious that you're so sure saying that I was so sure when I wasn't so sure.
The picture, by the way, we showed you is another Doug Mills picture from the New York Times, but it's not of Joe Wilson. It's of Lewis Libby, Scooter Libby, they call him, Vice President Dick Cheney's Chief of Staff. And the story is about Joe Wilson's book, which comes out this week. And he'll be on, I think it may come out today or yesterday, and he'll be on the Journal next week. Let's go to Millersville, Georgia. You're on the air.
Good morning, Brian.
Hi.
I'd like to say that I really enjoy watching C-SPAN.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking my call. My question for Matt is, we're spending millions and millions, billions of dollars even in Iraq, claiming to try to build a new democracy in the Middle East. My question to you is, what role do you see women playing in this new democracy, since women are submissive people in the Muslim religion?
Well, that's going to be fun to watch, isn't it? Hopefully they're going to have a say in the matter before we go to an election here, so we can see how they do. One of the photos from 60 Minutes is of a woman soldier, they allege, pointing and humiliating an Iraqi man. Now, she doesn't look like an American soldier to me, and I thought this was curious. Now, CBS said she was. Now, women are getting back at men. If this is where it's going, who knows? You could have a First Lady of Iraq, albeit probably in a better setting.
By the way, on the front page of today's Baltimore Sun, they talk about the families of the 372nd tormented by stories of POW abuses. And the Army said yesterday that 14 of the 17 soldiers implicated in an investigation of the abuse of the Iraqi detainees at the prison are from the 372nd, which is in Cumberland, Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Again, an interesting dynamic on who's making it a priority and who isn't. Again, all I point to is the British newspapers, which have gone absolutely crazy with this torture story, and the American papers not too interested.
Let's go to Reading, Pennsylvania. Tom Shanker, the New York Times, up in 15 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Drudge. How are you doing?
Morning.
I also am a fan of C-SPAN for several years now. In response to one of the former callers about the importance of the 9/11 Commission and his disappointment in regards to Senator Kerry leaving, I'm just curious as to whether or not you know where Mr. Kerry was going. I believe I've been reading Zell Miller's book, and I think it's very interesting that out of 365 days last year, 150, our Congress was in session, and most of the time our senators are spending their time with special interest groups rather than the issues of we the people. And I'm wondering if special interest groups were at hand that day as far as why they left, and what I know that we have to get out there and we have to vote about these issues in regards to getting our Congress to start thinking about we the people instead of special interest groups.
Thanks. What do you say?
Kerry issued a press release. My office has received several calls asking why I left the White House prior to the conclusion of the session with the President and the Vice President. The reason is I had a previously scheduled meeting with Senator Pete Domenici on Capitol Hill. Now, I was told they went to the Capitol Grill, and I wasn't able to confirm that. If, in fact, they went to lunch, I think Kerry's got some answering to do. If it was a serious meeting, well, more power to him. I just have issues with Kerry because the last time I saw him was at least being promoted on Comedy Central and The Daily Show, which I assume he didn't leave in the middle of taping.
Glenview, Illinois, you're on.
Hi, thanks for C-SPAN. A question for Matt relating to a previous caller, also about the 9/11 Commission. You had mentioned that you had asked that caller if he would have been if he would have wanted to hear Bill Clinton's testimony as well, and I just felt that the way that question was asked left the impression that it had not been that his session had not been recorded, and in fact, at least according to the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, and USA Today, all of which I had read, stated that Bill Clinton's and Al Gore's, although they were separate, that their sessions had been tape recorded with their permission. And in conjunction with that, I don't know if you meant to leave that impression. That's definitely the way it sounded. I don't know if you know or didn't know if that was the case. Another thing is yesterday, last night on the O'Reilly Factor, they had Tony Snow, who did something very similar. He was not answering questions like you were. He actually was the one who brought up the topic, and his whole point was to talk about how hypocritical the media had been by talking about how Bush needed someone with him, whereas Clinton had people with him also, although not his vice president. His whole point was the hypocrisy. They'd been talking about spin, etc., and yet he also conveniently left out the fact, he was talking about them leaving stuff out, not mentioning that, while he left out that there was a very big difference in the fact that Clinton's was recorded.
Caller, are you saying that we will hear Clinton's testimony in the 9/11 Commission, that will be made public one day?
He's not there any longer.
He's not there.
No, we're
because
here.
it was my impression we'll never hear the Bill Clinton testimony. To me, I was a little confused on if it was being recorded or not. But we maybe get the answers to it. Bill Clinton's book is already #1 on Barnes & Noble, outselling Harry Potter at Harry Potter level. So we'll get the full Clinton here this summer, in his own words, I'm sure.
A number of newspapers this morning show what presidents have done in the past about ever testifying. I've seen it written, no president's ever gone under oath, except, Jerry Ford testified in public on October 17, 1974 to explain his pardon of former President Richard Nixon. Ronald Reagan was interviewed on January 22nd and February 11, 1987 by the Tower Commission, which was investigating the sale of arms to Iran and the diversion of profits to rebels in Nicaragua. He provided further comment in a letter dated February the 20th. Earlier ones were Woodrow Wilson, who met with members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee at the White House in 1919 talking about the Versailles Treaty, and Harry Truman hosted a bipartisan Hoover Commission at the White House on September the 29th, 1947.
We like separation of powers, don't we? Can you imagine this Congress or a former Congress grilling a president in public? It would be a circus. So I'm glad there are separation of powers, especially when there's TV cameras, thanks to you, Brian Lamb.
Bethesda, Maryland, you're on the air.
Good morning. Greetings, Matt. I read your site several times a day. It's the first place I go when anything happens, and I think that this morning everybody has totally missed the point of Matt Drudge, and I cannot believe it. They're attacking you. I think you're the best thing that's happened to this country for free speech, liberty, and democracy. And I think that we get the free flow of information. We are not tied to the biases of the newspapers, whatever side they're on, and I just applaud you, and I just think that everybody should read your site.
Well, thank you, but I would say you're tied to my bias, though. That's my whole point. the more the merrier in all this, especially in this consolidation era when there's fewer and fewer people controlling nearly everything on the dial. More power to the individual who comes forward and reports. In this case, in the media zone, but it's just my bias on the world, and I'm completely biased on what I find interesting. If it's not interesting, I'm not going to put it up there. So you can't say I don't have a bias. I do. I probably am biased towards interesting developments on planet Earth.
And other than the fact, and for those who have never seen it, here is a list, for instance, of all the sites that you can, all you do is click on a name. And I wanted to ask you about some of these that I'd never heard of. Who's Keith Kelly?
Keith Kelly is the media book writer for the New York Post.
Who's Marvin Grove?
Martin Grove works for the Hollywood Reporter. He writes, he's their lead columnist out on Bologna Boulevard there.
Who's Leah, is it Garchik?
She writes kind of the reliable source column for the San Francisco Chronicle.
And who is Nikki Finke?
Nikki Fink?
Fink?
She's had a long journey from working for various outlets. She's now at the LA Weekly.
Do they ever call you and say, I want to be hyperlinked from your site?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But again, I go to where I find the action is, and all those people I find interesting. I see myself as the ultimate editor. I get to decide who's hot and who's not. If Sapphire's good today, I link it. If Jim Pinkerton's good today, I link it.
So you change that list?
No, I keep the standard list, but I will highlight if they write a good column.
Well, like for instance, here. I mean, here's your homepage here, and if you click on there, you get that particular story.
From me, that one's mine. Yeah.
And then up here in the corner, there are TV group to preempt Nightline's death list reading. Koppel defends. Wolfowitz confused on body count. Those are 3 different stories at 3 different places.
Yeah, they are, but in my mind, they're all happening now. Wolfowitz missing the body count by 200 yesterday on Capitol Hill, I thought was one of the most embarrassing things we've seen in a while. Comes on the night that Ted Koppel is actually going to read the list, or within 24 hours of it. So to me, it was all related. Yes, all different sources. Bloomberg, Pointer, and I don't know where Wolfowitz came from. I think that's the AP.
Norman, Oklahoma, you're on.
Yes, good morning. I was just wondering here, I did go to Vietnam. Don't have a hell of a lot against anybody that didn't go. I was just wondering, as I listened to Mr. Drudge, it seems to me like that we get back, I read some of his stuff, we get back to where something happens to Bush, and, well, it was Bill Clinton's fault. Or Bill Clinton said they had weapons of mass destruction. Then in your next column, Clinton was the biggest liar that ever come down the road. So how can you use him to defend the weapons of mass destruction because he said it, when you don't believe him about whether the sun got up this morning or not? My concern with this stuff, with people like you and these Hannitys and all this stuff, hey, I fought for your right to do whatever you want to. So you start messing up my front porch. Then when you mess up my front porch, I'm going to get you back on track, back where you're legitimate, where you really should be. I don't begrudge you for standing here calling some Democrat something. I'm a registered libertarian. But what I see with this administration is my freedoms going down the tubes. I also see my debt that my great-great-great-great-grandchildren will still be trying to pay. So as far as if anybody wants to believe whatever, but to the American people of an old green hat, get your source. Find out who it is. Don't listen to some blowhard Democrat or some right-wing Republican. And first of all, let's remember one thing. If you believe in God, then you have to believe he loves all of us.
Thanks, caller. Mr. Drudge.
Morning sermons here. Sir, it sounds like you'd be a perfect candidate for a website. You should start one up. We'll come check you out.
You want us to see this. You picked it from Jennifer Lee.
Yes.
If you're not invited, you're not alone. Just asking, which 2 architects of the invasion of Iraq were stopped at the party's door and had to call inside for reinforcements to get them past the bouncers? Which very important correspondent for a major news weekly sheepishly called up before the big event, wondering if his invitation had gone astray? Which 2 Wall Street Journal reporters lingered outside until the Treasury Secretary came along and then swept in as a part of his entourage? People who know enough to pose those questions never have to ask this one, what's the big fuss? They know that the biggest event on the Western social scene taking place this Saturday night is the party that is given by Bloomberg News immediately after the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner. The Bloomberg Party is where C-SPAN meets Access Hollywood to create a nerdier stepsister of Vanity Fair's Oscars Fete.
There
you go.
This is the big weekend. This is the true Washington, in my opinion. People scrambling to get into a party, to rub shoulders with each other. 700 people invited.
Are you invited to the Bloomberg Party?
I got it this year. Yeah, I'll be there.
How big a deal is that?
They claim it's the night of the year. Rivaling Greenspan's, the New York Times and Bill Keller and all these opinion makers who, in the end, are a bunch of elites, in my opinion.
But you're going, though.
I'm going, but I'm not sitting here writing and bragging that if you're not invited, you're not alone. It's interesting they put this story right under the CIA Joe Wilson book, because this all to me is kind of the same type of thinking. It's all a very Vanity Fair town. If you're not busy posing for magazines, you're busy going to parties and all the rest. I just think it really is telling when you actually see it in print, the way that they wrote it this morning.
Let's go to Wichita. You're on the air.
Mr. Drudge, how are you, sir? My question to you is in reference to the Nightline and the showing of the names of the veterans that were lost in this war. Can you hear me okay?
No, you can't. Hold on just a second, caller, and we'll get the speaker turned up so he can hear you. Now go ahead, please.
Okay, can you hear me better? My question is regard to the controversy over the naming of the Nightline on the names of the lost individuals in our war in Iraq and Afghanistan. To me, I look at it in comparison to the movie The Passion of the Christ, where the people who loved the movie realized the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for humanity. When I see George Bush in 9/11, I see the sacrifice that he was trying to make at 9/11 to those who lost their lives and to the evil that was to destroy us. Where the other side only see what this is costing us, because what George Bush is doing, these people, this is not worth it. It's not worth it. To me, they're trying to draw a line that sacrificing for your country no more is no longer worth it.
Thank you, caller.
Where was that caller from?
Wichita.
Yeah, see, that makes sense. That's out there in the heartland. You wouldn't get a call like that within 100 miles of this capital, in this cynical town. Right on, caller. I feel the same way, and that's why I'm not against naming these names, because to me it's humbling as a citizen that fellow citizens would go in there and do this. Of course, the other side will see this as Bush sending people off to war to die for oil, and the Michael Moore Fahrenheit 9/11 debuting at Cannes Film Festival and all the rest of this. No, I think there is another way to look at things, and that's why information to me is imperative. The more information you have, you can make these decisions for yourself. And you don't have to watch Nightline tonight. And as the gentleman who owns some of those stations who carry ABC, he's not going to air it. All freedom of commerce and freedom of self-censorship.
Front page of yesterday's New York Times has this as the lead story by Tom Schenker. Hussein's agents behind attacks, Pentagon finds, insurgency was planned. Mr. Schenker will be with us in about 3 or 4 minutes. But first, the last call for our guest, Matt Drudge, as he goes off to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Cleveland, Tennessee. Hello.
Yes, I would like to say I cannot name not one good thing that George Bush has done for this country. Here in Tennessee, gas is almost $2 a gallon. Milk is over $4. And I do believe that you're silly enough that if George Bush was to come out tomorrow and say all black people in Chicago were terrorists, you would believe it, you and the rest of the Republicans.
Thanks.
Oh, enlightened call. I mean, how do you respond to something like that? She obviously isn't going to vote for Bush. It's her prerogative. But to sit here and say that if he came out and said that about black people, shame on you, caller, shame on you. That is not correct. It's not how I feel. And I have a feeling that's not how the president feels either.
We always look at the nonfiction bookseller list, and only 3 of the bestsellers for the week are on the Wall Street Journal list that are on the New York Times list. It's a very different list. And number 1 on the Wall Street Journal is Plan of Attack by Bob Woodward. It doesn't show at all on the New York Times because they're a week behind, and the book just came out. Matt Drudge, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Please come back.
Sure.
We're going to show some photographs from our bus out there on the road as we disconnect Mr. Drudge and bring out Tom Schenker.